Hey, soulmates and soul sisters. It's Kathy, your teacher research helper. Today in this video, I want to tell you a little bit about the next data gathering strategy that I want you to try. Remember so far what we've been doing is looking at your question, refining your question, making sure your question connects in some way to the big learnings that you've been learning about in SOEL. Last time we talked about observations and taking observational notes as one fabulous way to start gathering research. Today we want to talk about a second strategy, and that strategy is surveys and questionnaires. There's a PowerPoint that accompanies this that you can look at, which will have written out all the kinds of things I'm going to say to you right now. So make sure you look at that because I think that will be useful to you. So let's talk about questionnaires and surveys as a data gathering technique. Why are these important? They really let you gather a lot of material all at once from a lot of people. So that can be a really great way to add to your stuff. So, for example, if you're doing observation, you might not get everything that's going on with everybody. If you're doing interviews, which we'll talk about next time, you might not be able to interview everybody, but with surveys or questionnaires, you can gather a large amount of information from everybody in your class, which can really help you start gathering and understanding what's going on. So that's one of the reasons we use questionnaires and surveys. Is there a difference between those two terms? Not really. Some people think of questionnaires as being a little bit more formal, surveys being a little bit more casual. But really, that's the first thing to think about when you're going to do something like this. Something that you give students and they will respond in written form to it, is whether you want to be formal or informal. Formal can be something that you create over time, right? So you have many, many questions. You've thought about those questions. You make sure everybody in the group has the same questions. So you've given a lot of thought to it and you're presenting that to your students. On the other hand, you can do them informally too. An informal one can be as simple as you notice something going on in your class, you stop for a minute and say to your students, hey, could you answer a few questions for me about what we just did? So it can be informal like that too. Second thing to think about in terms of surveys and questionnaires is the kinds of questions you want to have. So do you want to have open-ended questions or close-ended questions? Close-ended, which would be the ones where you ask something and then you give them an A, B, C, D response, or you list 4 things and the students circle the one that describes best what they're talking about. Open-ended, of course, is what you're doing when you have a question and then students get to write whatever they want in response to it. So think about that when you're devising and designing your survey. Another thing you might want to think about with the students that you'll be working with, because they're younger, is whether you want to read out loud to them and have them respond with either symbols, smiley faces, frowny faces, thumbs up, thumbs down. There's some various ways you can adapt these for working with younger students. So think about that as you're trying to create and design your survey. When you actually do the design of your survey, it's really important to think about who that audience is. So if it's young students, you're probably not going to want a lot of questions, right? You probably just want a few questions. You want to think about, are you going to do the survey one in the beginning of the year and then the same survey later on in the year? So you can kind of compare results and see what happens. So consider that when you're designing the survey as well. Consider how you ask the questions. Make sure they're really clear. Make sure they're things that people can understand. Make sure if you do a close-ended one, for example, the responses that you have are ones that will really get at what you want to get at. The best way to do that, of course, is to get some feedback. So that's what we're going to ask you to do. So so on the Edmodo for next time, we'll have a place where you can pose some survey questions. Make sure you put your teacher research question at the top. Make sure you're thinking really carefully about how a survey could really help you get the responses to that you want. Like, how can that survey help you answer your teacher research question so that your questions connect to that? So put up your question, put up a few survey questions that you're thinking about asking, and everybody, let's get on and give response to our soulmates on this about what we think about their questions. After you feel like your question is kind of set, my hope is that you can try it out with your class, get some responses, and bring all that to our face-to-face meeting in November. Remember that the first time you do some of this work, it's not fabulous. Sometimes you do it and it works. Sometimes you do it and said, oh, I wish I'd asked this, I wish I'd asked that. Remember, this is just getting started kind of survey to try to learn from and see what you're doing. And then next time you can try one that's even better. So hope this helps. Look at the PowerPoint, and we'll see you in about a month. Bye.